On this edition of Money in Your Pocket, we sit down with David McGrady from EIU School of Business to talk about retirement planning, from pensions to 401ks to IRAs and more. David will help us to better understand the retirement planning and saving process, and he'll help answer that burning question, how much do I need for retirement? He'll answer that question and a lot more next on this edition of Money in Your Pocket.
This program is made possible in part by Credit Union One. Proud to support Money in Your Pocket. Credit Union One offers savings and lending options. Additional information on membership available at creditunion1.org. Loans subject to approval. Accounts are insured up to $250,000. By member's choice, this institution is not federally insured.
Welcome back to Money in Your Pocket, and today's topic is about retirement, and David McGrady from the EIU School of Business joins me to give us the 411 on retirement.
Thank you for having me.
Tell our viewers a little bit about your background. You know, you teach at Eastern, but you also have a professional background too in finance.
Right. I worked at Price Waterhouse, which is a large CPA firm, before I came to Eastern, and I still do some accounting work as a consultant, so I am actively involved in the area too.
All right, well, let's get into retirement. I think the biggest question a lot of people ask is, when should I start?
Well, it's never too soon to start. For sure. When you do the numbers, it makes a big difference with the way compounding works. If you start at, let's say, age 20 versus age 30, if you start at age 20, you're going to be so far ahead that the person that waits and starts at age 30 will never catch up with you. So that's something that parents can think about too, if maybe they can assist their kids with starting to save for retirement, even if their kids are not financially able between ages of 20 and 25.
So it's never too early to start. You mentioned compounding. Can you explain what that is?
Well, it's basically how money grows, where if we start, let's say, with $1,000 originally and it earns 10% in the first year, then in the second year, we're going to be growing off an $1,100 base instead of a $1,000 base. So you can kind of envision it like if you're making a snowman, and as you push the snow and the snow gets bigger and bigger and bigger, that's kind of how compounding works, where your snow that you've rolled up is much larger now, and so a 10% return on that is going to be much larger than when you first started with a very tiny snowball.
So you can, if you start young, when you're younger with a small amount, is better than trying, as you said before, trying to catch up at age 35.
Yes, we can do calculations that basically show that $1,000 today, even if we assume just 3% inflation, that 40 years from now, that might be the equivalent of $4,000 at that point. And so what seems small today will not seem so small as it grows over time, as long as you leave it there and let it grow.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what are the different sources of retirement income. In the old days, the old days, it was Social Security, but now there's a lot of different ways to save for retirement and then draw on that later.
Right, and this certainly is an area that's changing right now. Traditionally, we thought of at least three sources of income: Social Security, as you mentioned, and then also the income that we'd have from our retirement plan at work, and then also typically we might have some personal savings outside of retirement accounts. And then sometimes people think of a fourth source of income, which is maybe continuing to work part-time during retirement, not just shutting it down completely. So we've had changes in those areas. As we're aware of, there's issues with Social Security, and people are concerned about what's going to happen in the future with Social Security. But I would say probably the biggest change that's taken place is we've moved away from the plans that maybe our parents had, where it's what was called a defined benefit plan, where if I worked for the company X number of years, that I could count on having X dollars based upon my salary when I retired. And we've moved away from those types of plans in the last 15 or 20 years to what are called defined contribution plans, which are 401k plans, where we put money in as we work and hopefully the funds grow, but there's a lot of consternation about how much do I need to have in this plan at the time that I retire.
So how do you figure that out? I know that it depends on lots of factors. How do you even know what you should have for retirement?
Well, one of the starting points we think about is what level of income do I want to replace when I retire? And a general rule of thumb is we want to replace about 80% of our retirement income, or 80% of our income at retirement. If you think about it, when I retire, for example, I'm not going to be making contributions to my retirement account anymore, so that's gone. In Illinois, income from retirement plans is not subject to state income taxes, so that lowers our expenses. We're not commuting anymore. So we don't need to necessarily replace 100% of our income at retirement. So if we start with the idea I want to replace about 80% of my income, that gives us the dollar stream that we want to start with. Now, it's important for people to understand that, let's say I would shoot for $40,000 a year of income, my first year of retirement. You're not going to want that to stay $40,000 that most people easily have a 20, 30, maybe even a 40-year retirement life expectancy. And if you just continue to withdraw $40,000, that's not going to go nearly as far your last year of retirement as your first year of retirement. So because of that, we have some general rules of thumb in the industry, and one of them is that a portfolio, academics have shown that can sustain about a 4% withdrawal rate. In other words, if I had $500,000 accumulated at retirement, that I could safely take out the first year 4% of that, or $20,000, and plan on having that $20,000 grow with inflation and not liquidate the portfolio during retirement, because that's certainly an issue with the 401k portion of our retirement funds, is the worry about outliving my money. And we don't have that with Social Security, that part of our retirement, but the part that comes from our employee-based retirement plans, we do worry about that.
Yeah, because you're no longer contributing it, so it's not growing anymore.
Right, yeah. And because of that, we worry about when market dips occur, because if we're going to have a portfolio that's going to continue to grow and produce a higher level of income during retirement, most people would tell you need to have some exposure still to equities. And we certainly have had situations in the past 10 years where the stock market has dropped 20% plus, and that puts a pretty big dent in that nest egg that you were trying to conserve and pull these funds out of.
Okay, you just said exposure to equities. Can you explain that?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what that sounds good, but I don't know what that is.
Yes, basically we still, classically, if we think about it, what we would have loved to have done during retirement is at that point switched all of our funds to the equivalent of certificates of deposit, where we put our money in the bank, we get 5% interest, and we live on the 5% interest. That's our funds that we spend. Well, in today's interest rate environment, obviously that's not possible. So because of that, if you want a portfolio that's going to provide you not only income now, but a higher income level of income later, then you need to have some components of the portfolio that will continue to grow. So said simply, we still need to have some exposure to the stock market.
Okay.
And when we have that continued exposure to the stock market post-retirement, then obviously we're still, at least part of our portfolio is still subject to the ups and downs of the stock market.
Hopefully more of the ups instead of the downs.
But it's not classically what you wanted to have in retirement, is that exposure to the volatility.
Okay. When we're talking about when we're still working and we're contributing to our retirement via our employer, there's two terms that come up: matching and vesting. Can you kind of explain what those terms are? When you get that job and you look at matching contributions and are you vested, it can be a little confusing, especially for people who are new to the workplace.
Exactly. Yes, I'd be glad to do that. With matching, basically your employer will put in some percent of the funds that you contribute to the plan. So a classic situation might be for the first 3% of your salary that you contribute to the plan, your employer will also match dollar for dollar your contribution. So you put in $3,000, but your employer also puts in $3,000 to the plan. That's the best investment you can possibly make, and it's certainly a huge mistake to not take advantage of the match that you have in your 401k plan. And the matches vary all over the place. Some of them are only 50 cents on the dollar, but they might go up to 6% of your salary. But that's kind of, general rule of thumb is you're looking at maybe a dollar for dollar match up to 3%. Then the question is, okay, well, how long do I have to work there to be able to pull out the employer contributions? How long? And so we have different vesting schedules. Now, the longest might be a 3 to 6 year graduated schedule, which is kind of complicated. But the idea is you might be entitled to 20% of the employer contribution after a couple of years, all the way up to you're 80% vested after 5 years, 100% vested after 6 years. So it's certainly important to understand as an employee, how long do I have to work there before
you're fully vested?
Yeah, I will receive the benefits of all these contributions made by your employer. Now, some places they have immediate vesting, and you're always, again, immediately vested in your contribution. So there's no risk of loss there. It's just how long do I need to be here to be able to receive the full benefit of my employer contributions.
Okay, so you've got your employer, and as an employee, you've got the retirement there. But you can also go on your own, and you can have a Roth, traditional and Roth IRAs.
Correct.
Those are two methods. Can you talk a little bit about those and the differences between the Roth and the traditional IRAs?
Yes, I'd be glad to. With the traditional IRA, it works essentially the same way as your 401k does. So they're both forms of tax-deferred savings. So by taking $3,000 and putting it in my 401k, or taking $3,000 and putting it in my traditional IRA, I am postponing the taxation of those dollars until I take them out later on. And with both of those, there are eventually what are called required minimum distributions. If you think about it, the government has essentially said, if you'll put this money in your retirement account, we'll give you a deal. We won't make you pay tax on it now. Well, after they've waited 40 years, at some point they would like you to take the funds out, so that's why we have required minimum distributions eventually. The flip side is, with a Roth, what happens there, if I put $3,000 in there, I still pay income tax today on the $3,000. But if I meet certain requirements, which the two basic requirements are, the funds have to be there until I'm 59 and a half and 5 years, and it's an and test, then any earnings on the Roth is tax-free. And as I talk about this with students, a lot of people say, well, to a 22-year-old student, 59 and a half sounds forever. But one of the really neat features of a Roth is you can, in my opinion, use it essentially as a source of emergency funds, where you can always take your contributions back out at any time, tax-free and penalty-free. So if you put the Roth, the hope is you put the money in there, it grows, you never need to take it out until retirement. But if later on you need to use it for a down payment for a house or something like that, you always have access to those contributions with no tax ramifications. Unlike with a 401k, if we need those funds early, most employers will allow you to borrow the money from your 401k, which avoids the tax and penalty issue, but then certainly we have to repay those 401k funds back. A couple of the nice things about the Roth alternative is, first of all, it allows you to maybe hedge a little bit against tax rates. The whole idea with the 401k is I'll put money in now when I'm working, presumably in a higher tax bracket, and then by the time I retire, I'll be in a lower tax bracket. Well, there's nothing guaranteed with taxes in terms of what tax rates are going to be like 40 years now. And when I started with Price Waterhouse, and I won't mention when, but it's been a few years ago, the maximum tax rate back then on certain types of income was 70%. Well, that's double what it is today. And so there's no guarantee we're going to be at the same rates at that point. So by putting some money in a Roth, you kind of hedge your bets in terms of well, this is money I can always take out tax-free. And in fact, another cool thing about it is you don't ever have to take the money out. There's no required minimum distributions for those because of the fact the government's already taxed the funds when they went in, so there's no provision that says at age X you've got to take these funds out.
So what other options do we have for additional saving for retirement?
Well, certainly you could save funds outside of retirement, what people refer to as non-qualified money, which essentially means you're just opening a brokerage account somewhere and putting funds away there. You do have more flexibility there in terms of if you liquidate those funds. Typically, if you've got gains, they're subject to capital gains tax rates, which is a lower tax rate than when you take money out of your traditional IRA or your 401k. They're going to be subject to what's called your ordinary tax rate. So that again gives you another layer of diversification. In investments, we talk about how you need to have different components to your portfolio. Well, this is another concept of diversification where you've got some money maybe in a 401k, some money in a Roth, and some money in a brokerage account. And you certainly, with your 401k, want to always do whatever it takes to get the match, because nowhere else can you be offered investment where if I put $1 in, it's going to be $2 tomorrow.
That's still your best.
Yes. But beyond the match, maybe you don't put all the rest of your retirement funds in the 401k, because then if we did happen to have something happen with tax rates going up, eventually all those funds have to come out and you're going to subject them to whatever the tax rates are at that time. Whereas with a Roth, you don't have that issue. With the funds that are in a brokerage account, you don't have that issue either. Now, the one downside I would say to putting the money in a brokerage account, it is easier to get to, but sometimes that can be a bad thing because the temptation can be a little stronger.
You're on your computer trading all day and watching the stock market.
Not only that, but I mean, there's nothing to, sell the 100 shares of Google and take a trip to the Bahamas when it's really crummy outside. So, it's a little harder to do with your retirement plan money, fortunately.
What should you do if you, quit your job and you move on to another one? You've got that retirement from that old job. Should you leave it there? Should you roll it over into your new? What do you recommend? Yeah,
that's an interesting question. I mean, certainly the biggest mistake you can make is to take a check, which your employer is going to offer you, and go and spend those funds, because those were the early years of your snowball, and your snowball is never going to get as big because you haven't done the early years. So you certainly want to roll it into some other type of retirement account, and the government motivates you to do that because there is a 10% penalty if you take the funds out before 59 and a half, unless you meet certain exceptions. So you could look at rolling it into your new employer's 401k. Typically a lot of those will allow rollovers from another plan, or a lot of times what people will do will roll it into an IRA, a traditional IRA. And the advantage of rolling it into a traditional IRA, if you think about in the 401k environment, typically my investments are, I pick off the menu. So they'll have different types of mutual funds for me. And a very popular thing these days is becoming what's called these target date funds, where essentially all I have to do is say, Lori, I think I want to retire in the year 2054. They'll say, well, we're going to round that to 2055. We'll put you in what's called a 2055 target date fund. And then that fund basically changes its allocation between stocks, bonds, and other investments based upon the assumed risk tolerance of these individuals that plan to retire at age or in 2055. There is some criticism of those funds because let's say that you and I both plan on retiring in 2055. That doesn't mean that you and I have equal risk tolerance. I might panic a lot when the stock market goes down. You may be totally fine with that. So you do have to be aware of that. So with a 401k, you're selecting off the menu. With a traditional IRA, you have a broad spectrum of investments that you can use there. And we have what are called ETFs now, which are a diversified asset, but trades like a stock. Well, you'd have access to those inside a traditional IRA. So I'd say the main thing to look at is, do you seek that additional investment flexibility that you would have outside a 401k? And if so, then rolling it into a traditional IRA would probably make a lot of sense.
At what point, as you're getting close to retirement, you've been saving and saving and saving, should you really start getting serious about a financial planner to kind of help you navigate this? Because it is complicated.
It is, and again, like the question, when do you start saving from retirement? I don't think it's ever too soon to start working with a financial advisor because, even if you're 20 years out, there's going to be a lot of mid-course adjustments that need to take place as life changes occur. And so a financial advisor is going to work through these calculations with you, do what are called probably some type of Monte Carlo simulation to kind of show you the different possibilities of where you might be at age 60 if that's your goal for retirement, or age 55, which I think would be pretty aggressive, but can also roll into these, the plan, your strategies with Social Security. Are you going to take Social Security as soon as you possibly can?
That's what I was going to talk about, is Social Security has some options about when you take it.
Right, and certainly that can introduce some issues in terms of how this plan is going to play out. If you plan on waiting till age 70, which is as long as you can delay, but it does give you the maximum amount of benefits, then maybe Social Security is going to carry a bigger weight in terms of your retirement income versus if you plan to try to go at age 62.
So in these last few minutes, David, what advice would you give to somebody? Maybe they're sitting there and they're 35 and they're like, oh, I don't have nearly as much retirement as I should.
Correct.
What should I do? And I don't want to be panicked, but I want to make sure that I have a nest egg.
Yes. I think the worst thing you can do is to do nothing. That's certainly the case. It's certainly not as optimum if you started when you were 20 or 25, but as 35, you need to be realistic and work with the financial advisors and see what the possibilities are. Maybe financial markets outperform in the next 15 years, and so you do get a lot farther along in your retirement plan than you thought you would by the time you're age 65. But I think it also gives you need a realistic perspective in terms of when is it realistic that I can retire. If somebody runs the numbers, and what we'll do too is we'll look at, when you're doing a plan, you're not only worried about retirement planning goals, but typically there's funding for kids' college. And a lot of times those two things are at loggerheads. If you're going to try to pay the majority of your kids' college funding, that may postpone your retirement date. And that's, it's good at least to look at the numbers and think through that decision instead of just, flying by the seat of your pants and then getting 3 years out from retirement. That would be when it's time to panic.
Are you seeing more and more people delaying retirement or even partially retiring? Is that kind of more the trend? People still working part-time?
I think so. I really do, because of the fact that people are in an environment now where, as we started to make the transition to more and more people that are coming out with 401k plans instead of a defined benefit plan that provides a guaranteed amount per month, that those people just don't have the comfort level that the people that are guaranteed X dollars a month do. So kind of a fallback strategy is to continue to at least work part-time until I know I'm to the point where, I'm financially in good shape. There's no question that even if the market took a hit, I'd still be okay. And it's not a bad thing to do. I think also from just an emotional standpoint that a lot of people don't really think through the emotional side of retirement, that all of a sudden it's a big change in life. And you kind of go through a change of identity where I'm not the famous Lori Casey anymore. Now I'm just somebody shopping at County Market. And how do you deal with that emotionally? And so if you transition into retirement, you kind of work through some of those issues too at the same time.
All right. Well, David, we're all out of time. I want to thank you for coming by. I've learned a lot, and I think I'm going to start looking at where all my money is at to make sure that I can retire when I want to.
Okay. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
When it comes to saving for retirement, the bottom line is start early, and if you didn't start early, start now. Retirement accounts are like a snowball building on the funds you saved before, so there's no better time than now. Also, have a diverse source of funds for retirement. Social Security, a pension, savings, and IRAs are all part of a plan that will, in combination, pay for your retirement living. And how much is enough? Academic studies indicate that you should aim to replace 70 to 80% of your last year's income and/or plan to withdraw about 4% of your retirement balance each year. So don't stick your head in the sand when it comes to thinking about retirement. It's going to be here sometime. That's it for this week, and we hope Dave McGrady's information will help you put more money in your pocket.
This program is made possible in part by Credit Union One, proud to support money in your pocket. Credit Union One offers savings and lending options. Additional information on membership available at creditunion1.org. Loans subject to approval. Accounts are insured up to $250,000. By member's choice, this institution is not federally insured.